Viewers, welcome to the Personal Injury Law Show. My name's Tony Carbone. I'm a personal injury lawyer of nearly 30 years' experience. With me tonight I've got John Karantzis, a partner in the law firm. Good evening, John.
Hi Tony, hi viewers.
And Don Maffia, a partner in the law firm in transport accidents.
Good evening, Tony. Good evening, viewers.
Viewers, tonight we're going to be dealing with a very interesting topic about distracted drivers. We've had that many accidents on the road. We've had cyclists, we've had trucks coming to grief, we've had pedestrians, you name it. There's no end of incidents on the road.
Before that, Tony, what's in the news?
There's been a lot of stories, John and Don, but the one that really caught my eye this week was the issue about Ford closing down its plant after nearly 75 years. How does that affect us, John?
It's a disaster, Tony, it's a disaster. The economy, they say apparently around 10,000 jobs in 2 years' time will be adversely affected. People will lose their jobs.
Across the board, they say that this will cut into about 100,000 jobs. Yep. Component manufacturers, plastics, you name it, the whole, right across the board.
I grew up in Broadmeadows, near the Ford plant, Tony. My mum worked at Ford. I mean, this is going to be, the ripple effect of this is enormous. And for a community around Broadmeadows, it's just going to be disastrous. It's going to be an empty piece of land. And I can't see how anyone's going to move into that or redevelop or anything like that. It's just going to be tragic, Tony. It's going to, look, for me, comes really close to heart because, again, I lived around that area and it's just going to destroy the whole town, plus everything else that comes with it.
It's the death knell of manufacturing in Victoria, isn't it, Tony?
Do you believe we're getting to that stage?
It's a death knell, yes.
I just hope that with the dollar coming down, it might ease the pressure on exports and things like that, which will help our manufacturers. But John, interestingly, and this is the thing that the viewers must understand, there's a lot of people that are working with injuries, backs, shoulders, and they're too scared to lodge claims. What's your message to the viewers?
Exactly, Tony. There are a lot of workers out there that are working with injuries at Ford, at Crown Casino, at ANZ, at all these big organisations that are shedding jobs. The problem is if you're working, you've got injuries and you don't make a claim, well, after you've been made redundant or terminated, to try to make a claim afterwards, it's very difficult, isn't it, Tony?
It'd be very hard to comply with the accident compensation legislation, wouldn't it, John?
Exactly. You need, if you're injured and you're working, you still need to make a claim whilst working.
Exactly. And Don, that would also go for people that have had car accidents and have gone back to work, wouldn't it?
Oh, of course. If you've had a car accident, you've got to lodge a claim with the TAC as well. So John said pretty much you should lodge a claim as soon as that happens.
Exactly. Under the Act, it's deemed invalid if you don't make a claim within 30 days of the injury, unless you've got a really good excuse. Now, to protect your interests, workers, once you have an injury, make a claim.
That's it. And also, Don, there's protection afforded to workers these days if they try and sack them because they've lodged a claim. So that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, of course. But then again, is it a reasonable excuse that I didn't want to lodge a claim because I didn't want to disrupt my working environment?
Exactly. And you hear this all the time, that I feared losing my job. Well, if you're working at Ford, well, it doesn't really matter, does it?
At the very least, make sure you've got it documented with your treating doctors.
Exactly.
And put in an incident report.
And if you've been injured and you don't know how to make a claim, please give a personal injury lawyer a ring and I'm sure they will assist you.
Don, there's been a very interesting story about a lady who was killed when a semi-trailer slammed into the back of her because her car dropped from 100 kilometres an hour to 40 kilometres an hour. Give us a bit of the facts of this case.
I think the truck driver re-rendered this car and he said that she didn't have any brake lights, so they're trying to explain why the car reduced from 100 to 60 for no apparent reason that we're aware of.
Auto electricians have checked it. A couple from Volkswagen, because a Volkswagen was involved. I think there's just a dispute as to whether or not the car went into safe mode and by itself went down and decreased
So there was a
speed.
defect in the electrics in the car?
There may have been.
Yeah,
that's
suggested-
disputed. That's the problem.
Yeah, and they suggested it went into a safe mode or limp mode. So reduce the speed so you can limp down to move into a safer area. But I
What
think
about the
even-
engineer? There was three engineers in this, but there was also one from Volkswagen in Germany. They said
Yes.
they could find no faults.
No fault.
Yep.
No faults.
Don, with this incident here, what concerns me is this. This fellow has finally apologised to the family, albeit he says it wasn't his fault. My thing is this. Why wasn't he keeping a safe distance in case there was an emergency situation? Because he's not going to get charged. I'm not saying he should be charged, but do you think there is more to it than that?
Well, look, there may be, Tony, and look, if you look at the fact scenario, if the car in front is slowing down, even without the brake light, you should notice and keep proper lookout. So keep that
Exactly.
safe distance, react. The other thing too, Tony, we had on this show, we spoke about black boxes. We spoke to someone
Yep,
from DV
yep.
Experts.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Does the car have a black box? No mention of it. Look, may well be Volkswagen,
No, not
Volkswagen
this
doesn't.
one, no.
But look, those things will come in handy in these type of cases.
yep.
You will know what happened to the car and what reason why it would reduce down from 100 to 60 in seconds. So,
John, without downplaying the significance and the sadness of this case, recently there was a case where ducks went on the road and a client of ours slammed the brakes so as not to run over these ducks or swans, I don't know what they were.
Exactly.
And got hit from behind. He still got compensated because the Transport Accident Commission were convinced that he didn't keep a safe distance. It should be the same with this semi-trailer.
You'd think, well, there's compensation there, but again, you know,
Criminal? Beyond reasonable doubt.
he may be facing criminal charges. We'll see.
Okay. It sounds to me that there's going to be reasonable doubt. Say
Exactly.
they wouldn't prosecute.
yeah, well, as we know, Tony, criminals has to be beyond reasonable doubt, whereas in civil's on the balance of probabilities. So, different evidentiary burdens.
Interesting article about this constant battle between cyclists and cars. Middle-aged cyclists, you're living dangerously. Now, can cars and cyclists share roads? John?
Well, they have to. It's the new age. We have to. As you know, in the Melbourne CBD, Tony, there are roads that are literally used to be 2 lanes of traffic. Now 1 lane of traffic and 1 lane for the cyclists. So we have to live together. You know my opinion about cyclists and the road rage that goes on. But at the same time, we have to learn to live together.
Don?
Well, it doesn't look like we can share it anymore. That's why they're dividing the cyclists to the road users.
Exactly.
Now we're getting these concrete blocks in the middle to separate where cyclists can go and where cars can go.
Just on the issue of cyclists and cars, there's been proposals for cyclists to have identification plates. I think that's not a bad idea. At least we can identify who's been in accidents and who caused them. Viewers, we've got to go to a sponsors break. Today's episode's about distracted drivers. It affects everyone, so please stay tuned. Viewers, welcome back to the show. Tonight's show's about distracted drivers. The TAC have engaged in this campaign to deal with the issues of distracted drivers and taking your eyes off the road for 2 seconds. Now, Don, overseas, they've got this eyes off the road time theory. What's that about?
All right. So eyes off the road. So if you take your eyes off the road, let's say it's about 2 seconds off the road. So if you work out the distance that you could have travelled, depending on what speed you're going to, Tony. So let's take it 80 kilometres. If you take your eyes off the road for 2 seconds, you've travelled 40 metres. All right. Now, the reaction time to stop, to react to something, is 2 seconds.
Let me put it to you this way, Don. You said 40 metres. If we're doing 40 kilometres an hour, this is fact, you would have travelled 22.22 metres in 2 seconds.
Yep.
If you're doing 80 kilometres an hour, you would have travelled 44 metres.
That's right.
So it's a long distance, isn't it, John?
Oh yeah.
So, Tony, if you use the example, if you take your eyes off the road for 2 seconds, you've travelled 40 metres, doing 80.
Exactly.
Then it takes you 2 seconds to react. If you see something in front, to brake. So that's an extra 40 metres that you've travelled already. So 4 seconds means 80 metres of distance.
All right. And at 100 kilometres an hour, viewers, you've travelled 55.56 metres. John, in effect, if you're on the highway or freeway and you've taken off your eyes off the road for 2 seconds and it takes you 2 seconds to react, it's almost half the length of the MCG to react.
So what we're saying, Tony, any distractions can be fatal.
Exactly. Now let's get back to this truck driver, which is currently before the coroner. And let's be careful because we're not saying he did anything wrong. The issue I want to raise is this. Assuming her car's dropped from 100 kilometres an hour to 40 Ks.
Yes.
This is the poor girl that died. The difference in travelling is 30 metres times 2, 60 metres.
60 metres, and the truck driver will be doing at 100.
80 to 100, yeah.
Yeah.
The speed limit was 100, so he was doing 100.
Yep.
That's...
Doesn't give you much time, does it?
Yeah.
The reaction time is, well, we're
Zilch.
talking milliseconds.
Yeah. No, when we talk about reaction times, it is the reaction for the brain to send signals down to your, let's say, your feet to press the brakes.
Yeah.
So that's 2 seconds. Now, that's generally we're around the 1.8, 2 seconds. I mean, if you're a motorcycle rider, you probably have a quicker reaction time. Or if you're a racing car driver, you'll have a very quick reaction time.
Well, they've got to react.
Exactly.
They're
But the
going at
motorcycle,
300
believe it or
kilometres
not,
an hour.
so the motorcycle riders have a better reaction time than us because they've exposed to all these dangers around them and that they learn quickly how to react.
Yep,
Whereas
yep.
for us in cars, we tend to be a little bit quicker, a little bit slower.
The only thing I'd like to raise, John, on this issue of the truck is in Europe, they've got trucks in the left-hand lane. Don't you think it would be a lot safer if we went from keeping cars on the right and trucks on the left?
There is a proposal, isn't there, that
I think there
the
is, yeah.
trucks keep off the right lane.
Yep.
And look, that it seems like the evidence is saying that that is safer, isn't it, Tony?
Well, it works well in Europe. And
Yes.
on those roads, they do tend to travel a lot faster than what we do. John, when we talk about this driver distraction, I think the main distractions on the road these days are satellite navigation systems in cars, iPods, MP3 players, and the biggest one, the biggest of all time, is this mobile phone.
Mobile phone, Tony. That's the killer, literally the killer. Especially not only talking, but this texting and SMSing, and you see people driving along, actually texting whilst driving. You see people, drivers sitting at the red light texting, turns green, they're still sitting there texting. Now, there's been car accidents that we've represented, and Don, you've represented, where people are sitting at a red light, they're texting away, and a driver has hit them from the rear, doing 60 Ks.
Don, the thing is this, my view is that because of the pressures we've got on ourselves these days, the stresses, and everyone wants you to get back to them straight away, if someone rings you and you don't pick up the phone straight away, people get upset. If we banned mobile phones from usage on the road altogether, that wouldn't really affect us that much, would it? It would save lives, I would have thought.
I still think it won't change many figures, Tony, or much of the figures to do
Really?
with distraction.
Okay.
We're still, you know why, John? We've still got radios, CD players. If you're going travelling and you haven't got sat nav, you've still got the malwares that you'll be looking
Don,
at.
would it
The car's
surprise
just a
you?
Time bomb for it.
Would it surprise you that the research says that people that have got hands-free phones, there's no difference in them being distracted as opposed to someone holding a phone?
No.
John, would that surprise you?
It does, actually.
Yeah. So hands-free are just as likely to have an accident as someone holding a phone. That's what the research shows.
I think we have very short attention spans and we'll get distracted very easily. So there's going to be always these distractions in the car, regardless if you ban it or not. I think you should, right, train the drivers, educate the drivers. I mean, there's always going to be distractions in the car, Tony. If we say, do not have mobile phones, turn them off or regardless, we know it's not going to happen.
But what do you want a phone on the road, Don? You're automatically saying that I'm going to be using it.
Yeah.
And it's illegal to use a phone on the road unless it's hands-free. And the research shows that hands-free has the same incidence of accidents as people that have got are holding a phone. John?
Look, Tony, the law is clear. You can't touch a phone whilst driving.
That's it.
Now, it's pretty strict. The problem is people aren't obeying that.
No. Look, I think we've got to get to a time where we just cut it out altogether. It would be doing me a favour because the phone does ring and I don't pick it up these days, and then they abuse me for not picking it up. Let me give you social media. We had this Cheryl Keatner sent a message in saying, why don't we have more police presence on the road? She tells of a time she was rear-ended by a distracted driver who was texting or reading text messages. She had her 18-month-old baby in the car. Lucky for her and her baby that they weren't killed. John, there's your point.
Yeah, no, it is a problem. At the same time, Tony, it comes down to drivers need to be aware. Distractions are everywhere. Is there a view, Tony, where maybe there's a lot of inappropriate drivers on the road, for example?
Yeah, look, I guess her view that there should be more police on the road, a greater police presence would pick up drivers that shouldn't be on the road.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Oh, look, I think so. But again, it comes back to the educating the driver. We need to do a lot more. It's obviously not enough there. I know TSA have these initiatives, but you've got to get them at the young age. You can't. People are on P plates, and there's moves to have a P plates age extended to 25. I don't think it's going to change anything. Because if you say, all right, until 25, you're not going to be exposed to any phones, anything after that. Once they reach 25, they're going to be exposed to the phone, and they won't be used to it.
You're talking about inexperienced drivers. You can't tell me, when you talk about distances travelled, that an experienced driver won't have a better reaction time or be better in a dangerous situation, don't you think, John?
Exactly.
Evasive action.
Exactly. And Don, there's still no fault benefits available for these drivers.
Oh, of course. So someone who's injured in a transport accident in Victoria have entitlements to benefits from TAC, include medical expenses, John, wages, and also lump sum if they've sustained a permanent injury.
Viewers, we've got to go to a sponsors break, but please stay tuned because after the break, I'm going to take you about 15 matters or things that could happen on the road that I'm sure we've all been guilty of. Viewers, welcome back to the show. Before we get to these things that we've all been guilty of on the road, on Facebook, Imogen Browning says, maybe there should be more restrictions besides not talking on phones. Okay, now let me go to those restrictions. Listening to music, changing radio stations, flicking through track lists, eating, smoking, adjusting seats or car settings, advertisements, billboards and the like, taking your eyes off the road, drinking, noisy passengers in the car, going through bags looking for items, reading, workaholics, putting on makeup, electronic devices, GPS, navigation device, MP3s, iPods. John, you can't tell me, and it's not an admission where the police are going to come knocking on your door, that you haven't been guilty of one of those incidents at some point in time.
I usually listen to music all the time in the car, Tony, and I'm not sure about that as a distraction.
Don,
I think
you
it is.
would have done something of those. You've got children, you've got car seats, you've got kids in the back screaming.
Yeah, I look, I mean, probably everything except putting on makeup, Tony. But
I'm not sure about that.
Tony,
I think, John, the dial on your radio station. How do you know when to what station to turn it on?
It's already been set, preset.
It's already preset, Don.
Settings?
So why don't we just ban cars, Tony?
No, look, we're not saying that. We're saying concentrate on the road.
Well, that's what you're saying, Tony.
I'm saying concentrate on the road.
I'm concentrating.
Okay, John,
I'm driving. I'm listening to my music.
The TAC have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars educating us, right? And we keep doing the same silly things all the time. This business
Such as
about,
listening to music.
well, eating in the car, adjusting your car seat. Half the times you can't even work out how to adjust it.
If you're eating a souvlaki in one hand and driving with the other hand,
There was that case many years ago.
that may cause a problem.
But John, there was that case many years ago where a person was charged because he was eating his Subway, charged by the police, and police caught him in Subway whilst driving.
That's dangerous driving.
Exactly. So there are those things. But with the music station, okay, how about a passenger in your car, John? Would you get distracted if they talk to you? Or they just sit there mute.
So
and you
let's
don't-
just stop life.
All right.
Let's just
Viewers,
stop life then.
The guys are not playing down the significance or this business about distractions causing accidents. But remember this, and don't forget it, if you cause an accident and someone dies, culpable driving under the Crimes Act, Section 318, dangerous driving causing death or serious injury, 319 of the Crimes Act. So you could do one of those incidents, and if they can prove that you're mucking about, eating your souvlaki, or mucking around trying to adjust a channel, you could be charged with criminal negligence, which is culpable driving.
And in the end, that is a very serious matter, isn't it, Tony?
Exactly. Exactly.
And, but not only apart from the criminal charges, you know, you've seriously injured or you've killed someone on the road.
That's it. That's it.
And that, there's no laughing matter about that.
No. And in fact, can I say this? All the tests in the United States, Canada, Sweden, and everywhere else they've done tests on this issue, they say that the incidence of having an accident increases 4 times if you're using a mobile phone.
That's clear.
All right. Don, I've got an interesting case for you.
Yep.
I'm sure that this is one you're very familiar with.
Yes.
DPP versus Morel. DPP is the Director of Public Prosecutions. What are the facts of that case?
Well, this is a distracted driver. He's driving along and he's putting in a power cable to his satellite navigation system. And witnesses say that before the accident, he actually was swerving into the emergency lane and then kept on doing it and ultimately hit a parked truck, Tony, in the emergency lane, hits the side of it, slides along, and there's the victim trying to change the wheel on his truck and collects the victim.
So he's a distracted driver and he's caused a car accident, which has resulted in serious injury to the driver.
I think it was stated in the judgment. He's very lucky. The victim was very lucky that he's alive.
He spent time in hospital,
Done.
serious injury.
Sorry,
He
John.
still never went back to work too.
Let me tell you what the injuries of Mr. Gouch were. Grazing to his body, torn aorta, the heart, right? Infarct of his spleen, pulmonary embolies and bursitis in both shoulders, John. This guy's never going to work again.
I was surprised with the verdict, Tony.
Well,
Personally, I don't want to mention names. I'm outraged. He got a suspended jail sentence, John. What do you think?
It's 18 months suspended sentence, wasn't it, Don?
there was some mitigating factors. Look, it was 18 months suspended. Look, he did plead guilty. I think the judge said if he didn't plead guilty, he would impose a jail term. He was only 19. He was a worker. Look, there's a lot of mitigating factors. I mean, look, you know, he's at the end of the day, regardless of the jail term, he's done it or suspended. I think he just has to live with his consequences, John.
But at the
Knowing
same
that
time,
you've injured or nearly killed someone,
what about,
that in itself is a jail term.
What about the punishment? And what, for example, not long ago, I had a client who, a 60-year-old lady, she's walking across the road, a P-plater car hits her. She's a paraplegic now. Before that, she was a healthy human being.
Why did the P-plater strike the pedestrian, John?
Didn't see her, and not only struck her, drove off.
Oh, well, that's
Now-
admission of guilt.
Do you know what the sentence was in that again?
No.
1 year suspended sentence.
John, can I just I'm quoting from the judge here. This is towards the bottom end of a scale for this offence, not to say it wasn't dangerous. I'm not sure if it really community standards there, but the driver, Morel, had a clean record. That's what saved him from going to jail. I'm sure he didn't want to cause Mr. Gouch all these injuries, but for crying out loud, I would have locked him up. Don, you?
Look, look, personally, I think, look, having done what he's done, it's a jail term in itself for the rest of his life. Look, Tony, we can argue all day about this, but it really isn't going to change anything. I mean, he's done it already.
It goes,
doesn't make a jail term.
It goes against the grain of we've got the Transport Accident Commission impressing upon everyone that these road injuries and road accidents are causing a major concern. Don't we need the criminal justice system to also enforce that?
Yep. Look, they're costing lives and also huge amounts of resources and money.
For sure.
But viewers, this is one issue where I'd love to get your feedback on Facebook, Twitter, all those social media tools that you've got out there. Please provide us with your comments because I could bring them up in the next episode. I think it's very, very pertinent to our society, and I think that it's a topic that we should keep endeavouring to improve education and also our knowledge and the way we behave. It's about respect to each other on the roads, I think. Don, your client, Mr. Goldman, now, he's got long hair, tying up his hair, the lacquer band falls out of his hands, falls on the ground, he's looking for it, bang, he has an accident, John. What do you think of that?
It's seemingly an innocuous event, something trivial. However, what's happened, Don?
Look, it's affected his life immensely. He tried to return to work after. He sustained back and neck injuries.
So he has a car accident.
Car accident, lodges his claim for the TAC. He goes to see a doctor. Doctor says you should be fine. Goes to see a surgeon, you should be fine. He tries to get back to work, never gets back to, well, really gets back to work. And then unfortunately he no longer he had to stop working.
So he receives compensation from VCAT. He's
Yep.
fought his case.
Yep.
So even though this is his fault, this car accident is his fault, he's still entitled to no fault benefits, isn't
That's
he?
right.
Don?
That's right. And the reason why I went to VCAT is because TAC stopped or refused to pay him loss of earning benefits. And the reason why is because there was a lack of treatment. And I think in Mr. Gorman's case, he did have those problems, and he just went on the advice of his doctors saying you should be fine. So he tried to get back to work, and he never was fine.
Guys, we've run out of time. John, is there anything else you want to add?
Simply, please be safe on the roads.
Don?
If you've been involved in a transport accident, be sure to call our personal injury lawyers, Tony. You need to get advice straight away.
Viewers, thanks for watching the show. I want to thank John and Don for coming on board. And stay tuned for future episodes. Go to YouTube for our past episodes, and always remember to stay safe.